We're back for part 3. It is April the 25th of 2012, and we thought we'd give everyone in the future a view of Mom's favorite place, her chair with her blanket and her portable heater. And since we last recorded in January, why don't you explain what's been going on since then in like the last month?
It's been an adventure in the last month. I've been in and out of the hospital 3 times and with all kinds of inner problems.
So why don't you explain to your future heirs what that is?
Well, to my future heirs, I have cirrhosis of the liver, which apparently is a genetic problem in my family, amongst the women, and it started acting up several weeks ago, and just one thing led to another, and I'd go in the hospital, and I had procedures done, came home, and then they called me back because there were some complications. So I went back, came home, had to go again because I was bleeding, and just about lost all the blood in my body. But I am home now. Hopefully. It's been a whole week since I've been home. So I hope that's it, because I didn't care too much for the hospital at UC. So, although it was an adventure.
Why?
Why? Well, most of the time I had really good nurses and was able to make them laugh and loosen up a little bit. But the last night I was in a step-down unit, and which means a step down from intensive care. And I had a roommate who I think may have been at one time a lady of the night. And she kept me up all night long, and then she lit a cigarette about 5:30 in the morning, and I do believe it was pot, not a regular cigarette, because it smelled different and it was making me sick. And she had told us a couple of things that, when she had a bad accident and was brought to UC, and of course that was when she was drinking. And she offered one of her cigarettes to me. And you're not supposed to smoke in a hospital because you could blow the place up, which I told her wasn't a good idea. And when the doctor came in the day I was discharged, which was the next day, he talked to me about what I needed to do and what the results of things were. And then he talked to her, and I wasn't paying too much attention until he said, well, there's not much more we can do for you. We will just treat your HIV symptoms. And I about cracked because we were sharing the bathroom, and but I would assume uh, that they wouldn't put me in with someone who had active HIV, and but I was very glad to leave that place. It was crowded, and she was up all night long, going back and forth to the John, and then she'd go back to bed and whimper and talk, and I just couldn't get any sleep, so I came home to sleep. Um,
All right. Well, so you say the liver is genetic. You don't have to shout and keep your eyes coming up here. The microphone's picking you up, so you don't have to shout.
okay.
Um, so you said it's genetic. So it's nothing that you've done that's caused the liver issues. It's just something that was going to happen inevitably.
Eventually, yes, found out that a cousin's daughter has the exact same thing, except she's on a waiting list for a new liver, but she's also a good deal younger than me. She's 48, and I really don't qualify, and I got a little bit of extra time with a procedure they did, building a shunt, which is next to the liver and does most of the work of the liver. So it's taken some pressure off of that. But I seem to go in spurts where I'm fine, and then all of a sudden things break loose and don't stop until they've run their course. So that's how I spent most of my April this year.
Good times.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right. You brought up the woman next to you offered you a cigarette. Obviously you don't smoke anymore, but you did.
A long time ago, I quit on my birthday in 1989. I just got rid of the cigarettes, and haven't really missed them that much. I think at first I might have wanted one, but I wasn't a heavy smoker to begin with. I was social smoker. At work, I'd light a cigarette and put it in the ashtray, and then I'd get busy with something and turn around and stomp the ashes out because it had burned all the way down. So it was more like secondhand smoke, I guess. But
how did you get started? Do you remember when you started?
it was just kind of the cool thing to do in high school. I think I was about 16, 15 or 16, and a couple of the kids smoked on the sly, and they said I should try it. So I tried it. It was all right, but if I didn't have one, I'm dry, all day, it wouldn't bother me.
Now, I think we covered this before, but I may sound stupid to you in the future. Did your parents smoke?
My dad smoked.
Okay.
He smoked.
We covered.
I don't know how long, but one summer after a trip to New Orleans. We had driven down there to visit Dolores. I think Margie was in the convent then. And when we got back home, Dad had like a sunstroke, heat stroke, and he quit smoking. And he quit for 12 years, and then he started smoking again. Whatever set him off, I don't know, but it eventually killed him because he had emphysema, part of which was from his work. So I think we covered that already.
Yeah. Hang on. Okay, I gotta figure it out now. Where did you go to? We'll just make it easy. Where'd you go to grade school? Let's start there.
Guardian Angel School in Mount Washington and McNicholas High School right across the street from Guardian Angel.
And was there any master plan as to how they were picked as why you went there to school? Following in siblings' footsteps?
Well, it's where we lived, and it was the Catholic school for that area. So,
is it all girls' high school?
no, at one time it had been.
But when you went there, it was mixed?
It was the first co-ed Catholic high school in the city. It was a kind of a trial to see if it would work out, and apparently it did, because most of the schools there are very few, only a couple same-sex schools.
Yeah. Did you have many boyfriends in high school?
No.
No?
No.
Did you have any boyfriends in high school?
No.
Why not?
Because I was fat. Fat, and I wore glasses, and I was ugly, and
Well, you had friends in high school.
I had friends, yes, all girlfriends, and
And who were they? Do you remember them all? Who were your more important friends from high school?
Linda, Martin Alfieri, and Elaine Dorn Herzog, and Marcia Ewers-Striley, and Sue Schaefer Mumford, and who else? Mary Lou Pasquini Nolan, and
Did you do anything crazy, or you go out partying with them all the time, or anything like that you got in trouble for, or any major issues?
oh no, I think Linda and I played hooky one day and went downtown from high school and just walked around town and had fun, acting like we were foreigners and, pointing to things up in the sky and watching how many people would look up. There were a few. We had fun that day, but we had to pay for it.
Why?
Huh?
Would you get detention?
No, it was just, I know Linda was grounded at home. I don't know what happened to me, if anything. At that point, being the sixth kid and not really causing that much trouble, I guess they just let it slide with a reprimand. But,
Did you get punished often when you were younger?
No.
Well, what was the punishment? Whipping you?
Yeah.
Spanking you?
Dad would chase us down and use his belt.
Now he'd get arrested for that now.
Now he would. But then he didn't, and we could always tell when he was getting ready to use it because his lips would tighten so much they'd almost disappear. And he would just, we knew it was coming.
What do you remember most about high school era? Just the friends you hung out with, or did you?
Friends, and I used to work on a stage doing sets for the plays, and that's about it.
Did you play sports?
Yeah, I played softball. Tried basketball, but I didn't like it. Played volleyball. But back then they didn't have many sports for girls. That what I mentioned is about it. So.
When was it still driving age was 16 back then?
Yeah.
And when you got your license, did you get a car at all, or did you steal the family car, or what was that situation?
I drove the family car when I could get it. And we all took turns. It wasn't like today when kids get licenses, they get a car. We had to go around looking for rides or walk. So,
Okay.
primitive.
Okay, and then when you were leaving high school, were you planning on going to college? Do you remember when you were graduating high school, what your plans were, what you were thinking?
I was just so happy to get out of school. I hated school from day one. And although in grade school I was a good student, in high school I was average. But I did a lot of side things that, the teachers liked. And went to summer school to take typing, and that, if I hadn't, I wouldn't have graduated. I got half a credit. I was short half a credit for graduation.
High school.
Yeah. So I took typing
Okay.
during the summer.
Did you plan on going to college, or?
No, I didn't want anything more to do with school.
Okay, so what did you do after you graduated high school in 1960?
Started work at Hospital Care Corporation, which is now Anthem something. Anthem Insurance.
Okay.
From there, I got a job at XU.
And when you got these jobs, what did you do?
Well, at Hospital Care, I just went through bills that had come in and wrote up different cases of people who had been in the hospital and coded them. And at Xavier, I worked in the business office, typing invoices and such. And then I transferred over to evening college and did student records and that kind of thing, more student oriented. And then I got pregnant and had to leave town, so I had to quit my job, and I went to Florida with a girl I had just met, and stayed down there until it was time for the baby to be born. Had a great friend in my mailman, and he took me under his wing and took care of me, as so to speak. He checked on me every day and brought me to his house, and I met his family, and we'd cook out and things like that.
Well, you skipped ahead there, so
How'd I skip ahead?
well, okay, so that would be David that we're talking about there.
Right.
And so who was his father?
Jeff Reeves.
Okay, was that your first boyfriend, or you said you didn't have any boyfriends in high school? Who was your first, like, when was your first boyfriend? After high school?
Yeah. And he was the first one, I guess. You know, madly in love, blah, blah, blah. And all he wanted was one thing, and he got it and left the scene. And I was stuck. Consequently, the baby was put up for adoption and didn't find me until 1983. He was born in 1964. So it was a while. Never forgot about him, but I wasn't allowed to look for him. He could look for me, but I couldn't search for him.
Why couldn't you?
Because I had given up all my rights to him.
We discussed this a little bit, but when you were in Miami, I mean, did you work when you were down there?
For about a week and a half. And then they decided, I worked at a bank, and they decided that since I was pregnant, I mean, they didn't know it at first, but then a supervisor asked me. And I said, yeah. I mean, I was going to get bigger, so I couldn't say no. And they said, well, they didn't want that responsibility. So they let me go. And I didn't try for any other jobs down there because it was so hot. And I was very sensitive to the heat.
So what did you do for those 9 months that you were in Florida?
I wasn't in Florida for 9 months. I went down in May and came home right after David was born in September.
Okay.
So I was down there for
4 months.
about 4 months.
So what did you do for those 4 months?
I just took care of the apartment and walked to the grocery store and, you know, took a taxi home and went to the doctor at a hospital down there and did laundry and just that kind of stuff.
Now how did you, let's put the future people here on the Wayback Machine. How did you find out you were pregnant then? Is it just because you were late? They didn't have home pregnancy tests or anything like that, right?
Not really. They were just coming out with some things, but they weren't accurate at all. Just the fact that I was late and I was feeling funky in the mornings before I'd go to work and didn't need a rocket scientist to figure it out.
Yeah. And how did you feel when you finally figured it out?
I was angry and I told Jeff, and he said, well, I guess you'll have to have it and do whatever. And I asked if he was going to be responsible for any of it, and he said no. And he sat and told my mom and dad that he didn't love me and he wasn't going to take any responsibility for the baby. So it was all on me. And my dad threatened him. And, you know, he claimed that he didn't come around anymore because he was afraid of my father. And he don't be afraid of my father. He isn't going to do anything. You know, talk is cheap. But I hid it as long as I could, and my friends threw me a party, and I took off for Florida.
Now, what was that like when you left that? I mean, your parents obviously knew you were leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Did they tell you to leave?
Well, my mother was very worried about what her sisters and brothers would say. And I couldn't stay around there, according to her. I had to go someplace else, but I had to figure out where. And at first I was going to go to a home for unwed mothers, and I heard horrible things about it. So I scratched that. And then I decided I would go to another home in the city, but I had at least one girlfriend who worked at Good Sam Hospital, which is where I would have gone to have the baby. And so that would leak it out. So then I met this girl when I was working just during a flood. I was working with the Red Cross and typing checks for people who needed assistance. And I said I was thinking of going to Florida. And she said, oh, I'll go with you. So she did, but she was a real hellcat at the end.
What was her name?
Her name was Mary. Now I can't think of it. I just had it. But she threw a hissy fit when Mom came down just before David was born. And Mary didn't like that because she wasn't in charge anymore. And she got mad and stomped out. And the people who owned the apartment building kind of, you know, after I had the baby, they were very nice Jewish couple, but as soon as Mary moved out, then they assumed I was moving out too, and they shut everything off. So I had, because I didn't have any water, I didn't have any electric, I didn't, and we went to John's house. He took us in, and he and his wife Hilda. And we were only there a couple days, and I went into labor. He took me to the hospital and waited with Mom and acted like he was the father so I could see him in the nursery. And I did get to hold him, only because a student nurse didn't know all the rules about it yet. And so I got to hold and see him, and he was beautiful and normal. Thanks to me. Except now he looks just like his father. But at least he's in touch, and we get along okay.
And you told the story about being on the plane with your mom, right?
Well, once we got on the plane, of course, when I left the hospital, Lyndon Johnson was president then, had taken over after Kennedy was assassinated. And for some reason, he was in that part of Florida. And when I was leaving the hospital, I was just a wreck. And we had to sit in the parking lot and wait for Johnson's entourage to go past the hospital. We could not go out, of course. And then when we got on the plane later, I was upset and crying, and the plane took off. And once we were airborne, Mom said, "Well, did you want to go back and get him?" Oh yeah, I'm going to stop a plane. And I knew I would have to work, so I wouldn't be able to take care of him. And it would be on Mom and Dad, and they were already in their 50s and had raised 7 kids, so I couldn't do that to them.
They were older than that.
Huh?
They had to have been older than that.
Now, Mom was in her 50s. 64. I don't know. Dad was born in 03. So,
61.
yeah. But I couldn't put that burden on them of having to take care of a newborn, and I work. And fortunately, I was able to get a pretty decent job at Good Sam Hospital.
Doing what?
I was assistant to the PR director, which is now probably Human Services or something, I don't know. But I really, really liked the job. And I hated to give it up when I got married, but I knew what would happen after I got married, so I gave it up. I mean, I was pregnant when I gave it up. I was pregnant with Gary.
Okay, so you got back. That would have been the end of 64. So when did you meet Jim O?
In '66. A bunch of the girls. We used to go around to different places where they had dances for singles, and you could meet people that way. And I don't think they have anything like that anymore. But they were a lot of fun, and we had gone to St. Bernard Eagles dance on a Sunday night, and I met Jim there.
Do you remember when you first met him?
Yeah, at the dance.
No, do you remember the details of it though?
Yeah, we were sitting at a table, and he came up and tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I'd want to dance. So I did. And then he asked me where I'd been all his life, which was a cliche. At that time, it was the popular thing to say. And things just developed from there. We did go through a period where he broke it off. And I consider myself somebody he met on the rebound because he had been engaged and she broke it off. And which is not a good situation to be in because he was, fresh from being engaged and, thrown away. And he met me, and I just happened to fill the void at the time. But of course, I was thrilled because I still hadn't had any strong relationships. I had gone out with a couple of guys who, I thought maybe, but they would always end up with somebody else. And so I was infatuated, and we went together for several months, and then all of a sudden he broke it off and said he couldn't. I don't know what it was, but it was because of this other girl he had been engaged to. Apparently she had married somebody else, and it didn't work out, so she called him and Jim and wanted to get things started again, and he wasn't sure, and all that. So, but he got over it, and I was there. And he did get cold feet before the wedding. Like maybe a week or two before the wedding, he said maybe we should postpone it because my dad had been sick and had surgery. And he thought we should give him more time to heal.
His dad or your dad?
My dad had surgery and was recovering, and was still recovering the day we got married, but he made it. And Jim thought we should postpone the wedding until he was feeling better. And I said, you got cold feet. And I guess I convinced him because we had the wedding, but it did not turn out the way I had wanted it to. We didn't get to go around to people who had come to go around to the tables, and we didn't, what else? We just didn't get the party.
Why?
Well, Jim wanted to go, and I thought, oh boy, he's in a hurry. So we left, and it turns out that he wanted to get to the hotel so he could watch Al Shalokati News and go across the street and get some coffee from Frisch's. And I was so angry because it was, my dad had to take out loans to have the wedding. And then we weren't there to be part of it. And it was the biggest day of my life. And I got pretty upset with him. I said, you could have had coffee there. They had a TV in the back. Cold feet again. So that was our wedding night.
Neat.
Yeah. Big flopperoni.
Do you remember how he asked you to marry him?
I think he had a hard time because he told me, I think in February, that the jeweler was working on a ring. And he kept updating me that it wasn't done yet. And it was finally April when he gave me the ring. One night, when we came back, he was real fidgety. He didn't want to go to a movie. He didn't want to go to any dances. He didn't want to do anything. He didn't know what he wanted. So I think we mostly just drove around all night. And he took me home and he said, well, maybe this will make up for it. And he handed me the box with the ring in it. And that was it. Very romantic. Not.
Okay. Alright.
So, what do you want now?
Well, how are you feeling?
Big flop.
Sounds like it. Alright, so as you're urging, let's tell the people in the future what little Janie Navarro was like. What were some of your memories from early growing up in the Navarro clan at your urging? Let's start simple. You've got a big old pockmark on your thigh. What's that from?
That was in the first grade. Playing tag at recess. And they had cut down some trees near the playground. And we were running and playing tag. And then a girl came up and she didn't quite tap me on the back. She kind of pushed me and said, you're it. And I fell and my leg landed on a jagged tree stump and put a hole in it down to the bone, which fascinated me no end because I kept saying, look, I can see my bone. And the gym teacher took me to first a doctor, and the nurse didn't know what the heck to do with it, so she just dumped iodine in it. And then we went on to Children's Hospital, and Margie was called to go with me because Mom did not drive and she didn't have any way to get there. So I'm in Children's Hospital and Dad came up and I had to show him my bone. And I had a good time in the hospital. I was there for 2 weeks. And they had to do surgery, of course, because some of the muscle is gone. And lay there for 2 weeks with my leg up on piled pillows so it wouldn't shrink up. And that was my big thing when I was in the first grade. The rest of the time it was just getting through school, which I was an honors student in grade school until 8th grade, when we got really into math and geometry and algebra and right over my head. So, but I passed. And at McNick they put me in the advanced class and I said, no way, because that was even heavier math. So I transferred. I think I went to the geometry class because I had some drawing in it and stuff, and the athletic director taught it. And I used to fix football uniforms for him during study hall or something, and kept me busy. I brown-nosed a lot of my teachers.
Sounds like it.
Doing favors for them, and I think that's how I got out, because I just did not like it.
What kind of music and movies and TV shows did you watch when you were a kid? Obviously TV you didn't really have, but...
Yeah, we had TV.
Well, not until the 50s.
Yeah, I think we got our TV set in 49.
You were early.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember watching? Anything that you liked particularly?
Oh, there really wasn't much to choose from. It was Howdy Doody and The Lone Ranger and Buffalo Bill and a lot of westerns. I Love Lucy. You know, comedy shows, variety shows. That's about it. And of course they had news, but not as in depth as they do now. They'd have a newscast that would last, 15 minutes, half hour at the most.
What about music? What was your music of choice growing up?
Well, I liked the very kind of music because it was all voices that made the sounds of instruments. And they're really neat albums. I was in love with Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
Did you ever play any instrument?
Did I? Oh, yeah.
What?
I played the piano and was taking organ lessons, and it got to be too much for my teacher because he was coming from Dayton, I think, for my piano lessons and organ lessons, and it just wasn't worth the money for him. I mean, I paid him for the lessons, but then we didn't have the big highways. So it was a long drive for him to come for half an hour.
Well, you never were into Elvis or rock and roll, because that hit right around the time you would have been in that sweet spot, the teenage years when rock and roll hit.
I remember when Elvis popped up and the girls were just screaming and carrying on over Elvis. And we visited a cousin on my dad's side in Mississippi. And some of they had a couple of daughters. And they said, "Oh, you want to go in the bedroom and we'll play Elvis?" I said, "What's Elvis?" "Oh my gosh, you haven't heard of Elvis?" And I said, "No, I haven't heard of Elvis." And they played a couple of his songs, and I thought, okay, you know. And I never did get to where I was screaming and carrying on whenever I'd hear Elvis songs. And there was only one movie where I kind of swooned a little bit, and that was the extent of my love of Elvis. I like his music, but I just never was that type person to go into tears and screams and everything over anybody. Yeah. Johnny Mathis, I really liked him.
Did you ever go did you ever go to any concerts or anything?
No, they didn't. They weren't a big thing. I think maybe the first one might have been the Beatles when they hit town.
You didn't go to that, though.
No. No, but I mean, as far as concerts, now there's a concert all the time, somewhere. And there wasn't anything like that here. There wasn't the venue for it. They had the stadiums, and that's about it.
Okay, what about movies? Did you go to movies a lot? Like drive-in movies and stuff when you were younger?
Went to the local movies.
Where did you go? Like, was there plenty of drive-ins around?
Yeah, there were a lot of drive-ins, but my first movies were at the Elston Theater in Mount Washington.
Which was where?
Mount Washington?
No, which was where in Mount Washington? Because it's obviously not there anymore.
Oh, it was right at the top of Beachmont Hill.
Like
now it's, I don't know what's there now.
Because there's a Walgreens and a Kroger at the corners of
It wasn't at the corner. It's, I think there's like a little strip center there now, and dry cleaners and stuff like that. And, but, used to go with another girlfriend, Carol White, and it only cost $0.25 to get in. Then in high school, didn't go too often to drive-ins. I know we went to a drive-in to see Psycho, which came out after we were in high school, and scared us all half to death. And Linda was driving, and she would drop one off and one girl off and say, "What am I going to do when I drop the last one off? I got to go by myself." And she made it. you know, we all made it, but it was a scary, scary movie.
Did it scare you?
Yeah. Yeah, I had to go up these long steps to get up to my bedroom, and I kept checking to make sure there wasn't anybody up there. But, you know, we didn't have a shower stall as such at the time, so I didn't have to worry about a shower, somebody attacking me in the shower.
Well, I thought you had a teenage crush of some other movie star at the time, did you not?
Of course. The love of my life, Jimmy Dean. And unfortunately, he died young. But I sure was crazy about him.
Why? Do you know why?
Uh,
Or just because the age you were at?
well, it was mostly the age I was at, but he just was different personality wise. He was, you know, like my mom thought he was weird. Um, I just liked his personality, especially when he would laugh, which he didn't do real often, but there were times when he would laugh, and I just thought he was so cute. I like the strange ones.
Okay. You have a younger sister, Bev. Did you ever have to like babysit often for her? Were you like big into babysitting when you were a teenager?
I used to babysit other people's kids. Um, when Bev was born, I was almost 9. Mom and Dad never went anywhere, so when she was real little, you know, they were there with her. And when I was little, you know, I went with them because their biggest thing was going to a neighbor's or friends and playing cards and drinking beer, smoking cigarettes.
I forget. Did your dad drink?
Beer.
Yeah.
He liked beer.
So when you were a teenager, did you have that girly thing of when I get older, I'm gonna be a mom? Was that something you always thought of?
No, at first I was going to be a nun. And then after graduation, when these different girls in the class were getting married to guys they'd been going with forever, um, I said, I guess there might be something to that. So I gave up plans of going in the convent, and which I don't regret at all. And I just worked, and whoever I met, I would. At Xavier, I was in the stage group, the theatrical group, and um, we used to go have all kinds of parties and stuff, and you know, I met people like that there, and oh,
Your your first experience with David, did that put you off having kids anymore, or did that say, well, I definitely want to have kids now?
you mean before he was born?
After he was born, after that experience.
Oh no, I wanted to have a family, and I just needed to find the right person.
Do you think you
Well, I guess so. We've been married for 42 years. I guess there's something there.
I guess so.
Yeah,
I hope.
yeah. Kind of a pain in the butt now, but